All right, Michigan football spring practice in full, halfway through. Lots of rumors, lots of intel. Bryce hype through the roof. We're here to talk about it. Hail to the podcast. We are back. Look at us. Look at us. All three here. It's been a while. I don't have the time or patience to go through the myriad of things that have happened to us over the last couple months that have derailed this podcast. I will tell you, folks that, obviously are with us at michigan.rivals.com are aware of a lot of stuff, and our community on Twitter and in the den everywhere has been super, super supportive. So, hey, we're back. We're sorry we've been gone. We're going to do everything we can to make this a regular show again. Hail to the podcast, brought to you by Maize Blue Review. We cover Michigan for the Rivals Network, which means you can find us at michigan.rivals.com. One of the reasons we've been gone recently, though, a very cool reason, Mr. Josh Henschke returned to the fatherland of Australia. I joke, but in all seriousness, got to follow along a little bit, and life-changing trip for our boy. So glad you're back, but glad you got to have that experience, Mr. Henschke. How you doing?
Yeah, no, I'm good. It was a good trip. Yeah, it was, I was back to Australia for the first time in 25 years. So, yeah, that trip meant a lot to me. So it was a good time. Yeah, next time I won't be taking another 25 years to go back. That's for sure. So, yeah, no, it was good. It was good. And I appreciate you guys for holding down the fort in my absence as I was dealing with time differences with work and all that stuff.
That's a lot of fun. I'm a little disappointed. I forgot to add I said I was going to add that audio clip of you saying, I think it was unbelievable, with a very thick Australian accent that you picked up as soon as you got back there.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to,
to back into unbelievable. I'll have to find it. Also joining us in who knows where, always in a different spot, little scrambled, hair getting longer, Brock Heilig, our man, the most important part of the tripod. Obviously, basketball season over. We're not going to talk a lot about basketball today. We're playing NBA and all football, but what a little run there you got to cover, Mr. Brock.
Yeah, it was fun. Great job by the basketball team. I know I'm not going to talk about basketball much today. It's going to be football, but that's an A+ season right there by Dusty May, if I've ever seen one. I can remember the three of us sitting on a podcast in the fall when the basketball season was getting ready to start, and we were all saying, hey, listen, it's a success if they make the tournament. Like that's like a good benchmark for the team. And not only did they make the tournament, they were a 5 seed and they won 2 games and went to the Sweet 16 and had a 9-point lead on Auburn in the Sweet 16 with a chance to go to the Elite 8.
Yeah.
So just a tremendous season, and it's looking like things are getting even better too in the transfer portal. So it was fun.
Yeah, we will continue to have coverage of that over at michigan.rivals.com. Josh is settling back in, digging up some. I'll be honest, covering college basketball portal, I think, is one of the dumbest things in the world right now, because 90% of it is bullshit. This stuff that's coming out, these agents like, oh, Michigan has been in contact. That literally could have been like a 5-second phone call. Right. You know what I mean? And it's like everybody thinks, oh, Michigan was in on this guy and then they didn't get him. And it's like, it's a mess right now. But anyway, we are here today to talk football. And I think we knew the hype was going to be high, but the aura that exists around this young man, Bryce Underwood. I told Brock, I'm like, do you see the new pictures he posted? Like, it just every little thing that you can get about Bryce Underwood that's coming out right now is through the roof. Right now, look, we talked about it already about a month ago. We've kind of posted as spring practice has gone on. Nothing super shocking here. Bryce Underwood is a really, really good football player. Right, and he's doing really well in spring practice. I think the thing that stuck out to me, Josh, and I know Mikey Keene is hurt. We'll talk about that as well when we pull up the depth chart here. But coaches haven't been able to help themselves when they talk about Bryce. Like normally it's like, well, he's got to do this, he's got to prove this, and it's a long way to go, and he's just a freshman, and blah blah. The praise that continues to come out from Chip Lindsey, Sherrone Moore, not just about his talent, but his work ethic, right? His leadership, his maturity that he's showing. I've talked to multiple recruits. They tell you when you get there and Bryce Underwood is there, it's just the lights are on Bryce Underwood. He's just got this incredible draw to him. He's become an incredible recruiting weapon because of that as well. I think there's no chance he's not the day one starter at this point. And I'm not ready to predict he's going to have this unbelievable year, right? The things he's got to learn by playing football games.
Right.
But it's nice to see that despite all the big money talk, being the number one recruit and the ability, or not the ability, but the likelihood he could be this kind of cocky, arrogant kid, that does not seem to be what's happening. And this team and this program and these players are really, really excited about Bryce Underwood.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between being cocky and confident. And I think, I'll even go as far as saying there's a difference between being confident and arrogant. And Underwood definitely leans more towards the confident side than, the arrogant side, because I know a lot of people would probably, look to what he said on Eisen's show and about Ohio State and all that stuff. And then, everyone will kind of assume that, he's just this arrogant dude who just expects to come in. But no, that's just who he is. He's always been that way as a recruit. Even during the early stages where he was just coming up and not the 5-star number one QB or whatever that he is. So, even before spring, people were saying that the staff expected him to be a day one starter because he's just that good. And I think he's just, I think he's good enough to do that. We obviously don't really know what Mikey Keene is going to be, or what this injury is going to do to him and his long term, even though it's only a year, but the long term of his stay at Michigan in terms of playing time. But you'd obviously love to have depth at QB, and obviously losing a guy that you recruited out of the portal like Keene isn't good. But if you're Underwood, you're not necessarily thinking of it as a blessing that another guy is hurt, but you're being thrown to the fire early, right away. And he probably would have been regardless of whether Keene was available or not, because you got to have a guy ready to go like that. But the kid's just got a presence about him. It doesn't matter who you are, what level of football you play. If you're a recruit,
this hair is killing me. You're right, Brock. The hair is long and it's fantastic. Look at that.
That's what happens. That's what happens when you're knee deep in the mud in spring. You just let yourself go a little bit in terms of your hair. But look, it's at this point. If Keene continues to miss time and this injury is more serious than we think it is, it's.
I don't think we're going to see Keene at all in the spring for sure.
No, Keene won't be participating in spring at all. But you look at the comments, and there's Kirby from the Lions, the number 2 comment there.
Right.
It's like every level of football, everyone knows. Everyone knows who Bryce Underwood is. So he's just got that presence about him. But look, if he's not, I would be a little surprised if he's not day one starter. Keene would have to have one hell of a fall to really kind of make ground that he lost during the spring and then overtake him in the fall. That would be a pretty heroic effort by Keene. But sometimes we've seen depth charts and things go a little weird. So you never know what's going to happen between now and September.
Brock, talk about Bryce, obviously, but I want to throw into this conversation to you the next piece of that. Maybe not a benefit of Keene being hurt, but something we've seen is Jaden Davis, who I think a lot of people just assumed was going to transfer as soon as Bryce committed. said a lot of positive things about Bryce coming in. Everyone's like, okay, whatever. He's really embraced. Him and Bryce are really close, and Jaden has taken some steps this spring. It sounds like he's still got a little bit of a long delivery. We can nitpick that if we need to. But I mean, I've heard more about Jaden Davis probably fighting Mikey Keene for the backup more than the starting job at this point.
Well, yeah, I'll start off by saying I completely agree with what you guys said. In fact, Josh, I'd take your point even a step further. I'd be shocked if Underwood wasn't the day one starter. Not even just a little surprised. I mean, the kid's just really, really good, and especially now that Keene's not playing in spring, and like you said, Trevor, he's going to have to make up a whole bunch of ground once fall comes around. I just think it's going to be too much to overcome, but. You got to love what you're seeing out of Jaden Davis, and the coaches and his teammates are giving him a lot of praise, which I think is really, really cool because Trevor, you're right. A lot of people did kind of just write him off after Underwood committed. And I don't want to say rightfully so because Jaden Davis is a good quarterback, but I mean that the hype surrounding Bryce Underwood kind of just sent Davis off to the side. And, but yeah, he's going to be right there in the mix with Mikey Keene for the backup role, in my opinion. It's just, yeah, like you mentioned, Trevor, he's got that long delivery, but he's definitely handling this competition well, better than we've seen in years past. Let's put it that way. A few years ago, particularly
Well
for
played.
that competition. So
Yeah.
it seems that Davis is handling it well, and just you see videos and pictures of Davis and Underwood, hanging out, and it doesn't seem like there's any bad blood between either of them. They're just two quarterbacks that are looking to make each other better and get better themselves. And I think that's really cool, and that's what Michigan wants, and that's what Michigan's getting right now.
I think a lot about when Jaden Davis was a commit, and Josh and I felt like we were out here trying to defend the kid because of how much slack he was getting, right? And some criticism he was getting. We said, look, we know, I thought there's some footwork issues. We know about the long delivery, but we kept talking about the character of Jaden Davis. And I think that's what's really on display right now. Brock, to your point, look, he didn't play last year. And if there was ever a time for a freshman quarterback to be able to get on the field at Michigan, last year felt like that probably should have been it, right? And then Bryce comes in, so you're ready to write the kid off. So, dude, props to him fighting through and being part of the winning culture and finding whatever his role is going to be. And I think the last thing I've got on this is when it comes to assume we have a Mikey Keene or a healthy Davis Warren, and we're back to this narrative of does Bryce start week 1 or do you wait till like week 4, blah, blah, blah. My argument was always what's the difference, right? What he's got to learn playing football.
Yeah, right.
And you can't lose this locker room. When you've got players, I don't remember if he said this publicly or privately, so I'm not going to say the name. But when you've got players on this team who played as a starter level player with JJ McCarthy saying that Bryce Underwood is already better than JJ McCarthy, I don't care if that's true or not. I know the player thinks it is. And if you don't start him, that player's going to be pissed, right? Like, so whether he is already, I don't think he is, right? But these players want Bryce Underwood to start. It's just a fact. And honestly, him and Sherrone Moore are linked forever at this point. I think Moore knows that. Like, so whatever Bryce Underwood takes this program to is where Moore's trajectory is going to go as well. So might as well get started. I don't want to spend too much time on running back because I don't think there's anything too shocking here. Jasper Parker's going to join in the fall. Justice Haynes. Josh, Michigan does such a good job of getting guys in the transfer portal who just feel like they've always been here.
Yeah.
Like incredible culture fit, saying all the right things, the work, blah, blah, blah. It feels like Justice Haynes has always been here. What an incredible plug and play piece. Him and Jordan Marshall, Law and Order, that's going to be your 1A, your 1B. Brock will probably talk to this because he's always kind of been dead on with this point about when we get into who's RB3 and RB4, and then these guys hardly ever play. We don't know what kind of role a Benjamin Hall or Micah Kaapana might have. But right now, Michigan is very, very excited about this duo of Haynes and Marshall. And then obviously Bredesen back in his fullback role.
Yeah, I mean, what's there not to be excited about? You know, I think Justice Haynes reminds me a lot of like a Blake Corum-esque type of dude that can just do the dirty work for you. And Jordan Marshall certainly had the, I guess, momentum during the bowl game of being in that same type of vein. But you look at Haynes, you look at Marshall, they're quick, shifty guys. And then you've got Ben Hall a little bit with kind of a change of pace type of guy. If you really want to go 3 deep, I mean, you look at Haynes and Marshall and you feel like 2's enough, but you know how they like to rotate and all that stuff. And Benjamin Hall's earned some time too. I mean, you gotta take a look at what you have there with Ben Hall, and he can be your short yardage pickup, goal line type of package guy that can, kind of what Kalel Mullings was earlier in his career as a running back, kind of picking up the dirty yards. But I mean, as Steve mentioned in the chat here, NFL bloodlines just run through the Haynes family, and Haynes has got the type. He's got that football neck, is what you'd like to say, Trevor. But
all right, now I gotta. All right,
but I mean, he's just got it. The look test, the production at Alabama, really just a slam dunk home run hire here, or excuse me, home run transfer here by Michigan to get Haynes. I mean, you were kind of questioning where the direction of the running back was going, and then all of a sudden you don't even bother with asking that question anymore because you just got that done. You don't have to worry about it. It's like you almost can set it and forget it and be fine. And not to mention, guys like Donovan Johnson and Micah Kapana and Jasper Parker, who will push for time too. And Kapana saw some time later in the year, so he's earned at least some of the staff's trust. So you've got guys, and I guess it all just depends on how deep you want to go in terms of rotation. So, I mean, personally, I think they'd be fine with 1 and 2, but you've seen what Michigan has done so well the last couple of years in terms of keeping the tread on the tire, so to speak, with some guys, and they've done a good job of it. And, you kind of want to just keep that going, and they've got the depth. I mean, why not at this point?
Yeah, I don't have much to add. I mean, you guys hit on it, I would say. Haynes and Marshall, it's going to be one of the best tandems in the Big Ten, if not the country, in my opinion. I mean, you get Haynes, who was really productive at Alabama, and Jordan Marshall. I'll never forget Jordan Marshall in the ReliaQuest Bowl when he was covered head to toe in mud and dirt after that downpour of a rainstorm, and he's diving all over the place, just filthy, and he had a really great game that day. But they're the punch, and I think they're not.
The dumb Origato, Mr. Roboto over here.
Yeah, Wi-Fi is really bad, but
it's gone. But anyway, as he was saying, like I kind of knew the point. He was
I think he's back.
Oh, there he is.
Am I back?
Is he back? Is he back?
Yeah.
Yep, we're back.
Okay, cool. Well,
so whatever you said, say that again verbatim, because that not a single word went through.
All right, I'll say that Haynes and Marshall they're not exactly similar play styles to like Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards that we've seen in years past, but it has that feel of having that same production level that we've seen from those guys. Absolutely. Especially if Michigan can get the offensive line back to where it was. I mean, obviously they won the Joe Moore Award in 21 and 22, and 23 they were right up there as well, and 24. I mean, there's you can't take a step up from being the best, right? So they inevitably took a step back, and I think if Michigan can get back up to where it was on the offensive line, it's just going to make the running backs all the more better. But knock on wood, even if one of those top 2 guys gets hurt, you're still looking at Benjamin Hall there as your third running back, and he's proven himself to be really good, and he's he's a shorter, thicker guy, and we've seen that work with a guy like Blake Corum. And so yeah, really excited about the running back room for sure.
I really would have, not to cut you off, Trevor, but I would have liked to have seen Ben Hall kind of take over for Bredesen. Like, he's got that type of mentality and that body type that he could fill. I mean, it's not a glamour role, and obviously he wants to carry the ball. He probably wouldn't do that very often. But I think he would be a pretty good replacement once, Bredesen departs the program after this year. But yeah, they always find a guy. They'll find a guy to replace him. But
well, you've got Jalen Hoffman on roster, Eli Owens, new commit.
Yeah, Eli Owens is perfect replacement.
First off, good call. Yes, that is excellent football neck on Justice Haynes. The weird thing for me with this duo is there's no thunder and lightning. They're very similar, right? There's ways that they're different, but like, I think about, you bring up Ben Hall, maybe he's got that mulling short yardage situation. Well, Justin Haynes can do that. He did that a lot in Alabama. He'll run into a dude and run over a guy, he's got the Corum-esque thing. You're right. He makes those cuts and then he's gone. Marshall, we know his speed and what he can do. And he's been compared to Blake Corum since he committed here. Right. I know that's high ceiling, arguably the greatest running back in Michigan football history. Okay. But just in terms of that shiftiness, they both have it. They both can be weapons in the passing game as well, which we expect to see a little bit more running back involvement in the passing game this year. RIP Donovan Edwards. We spent 4 years begging for the man to be involved in the passing game. But anyway, I'm just really excited about that duo. And then, any extra production that gets thrown in from the rest of those guys, whether it's Kapana coming on in a second year or even some of the freshmen we mentioned, I'll take it. Let's get into the group everybody wants to talk about or doesn't want to talk about, depending on how you look at it. Wide receiver. One name consistently from workouts, spring practices, we're hearing a ton, Donaven McCulley, the transfer from Indiana. Also, I would say Jamar Browder in terms of the younger guys getting a lot of shots. Sherrone Moore is not hiding the fact that he's wanted a big body receiver for a long time, and he's really excited about some of these big body receivers that are here, right? So McCulley obviously comes in, going to play the X, brings the experience, brings the size Michigan hasn't really had. Chip Lindsey, I keep wanting to say Kelly, and I have to be careful. Chip Lindsey's going to want to test the intermediate range downfield and throw the ball downfield more. I think McCulley's going to be huge there. No secret, anybody who watches this show consistently knows we've been screaming about Fred Moore being an amazing receiver for a long time. He had a good rely at Quest Bowl as well. I think he's going to step into that Z role. Semaj Morgan is so interesting because in this offense, I think you're going to see a lot of tight end in the slot. So I don't know how much Semaj Morgan we're going to see compared to previous years, which might not be a bad thing. When he has his reps, he's good. They just need to get him downfield more. I couldn't believe how Michigan used him last year. I thought it was atrocious. Get him on some crossers, get him in some space, right? This isn't necessarily spot on, right, in terms of the order right now. I think those three are pretty set. O'Leary and Bell got a lot of snaps last year. Channing Goodwin's another name I've heard a ton about. And then Andrew Marsh. I think those would probably be my three on the outside of the McCulley, Moore, Morgan that have been getting the most hype has been Browder, Goodwin, and Marsh. Charleston is back. I don't know when he'll be healthy because I forgot he got hurt at the end of last year as well.
Yeah.
But Jacob Washington, another big, tall target that we've been hearing a lot of stuff about as well. He'll probably maybe get some plays this year. I don't know if he'd cut in ahead of Browder per se, but McCulley's obviously going to be here the 1 year. But anyway, is this receiving core good enough? Is it a combination of this receiving core, Chip Lindsey's offense, Bryce Underwood? It was historically terrible last year, if we're being honest, right? Historically awful. I'm excited about McCulley, but there's not a lot of change there. Do you think the other changes around them is enough for this wide receiver group?
I feel like this group is just going to be better by default because the quarterback play is going to be by default. I think the gripes that people had for the wide receivers, they're partially fair and mostly unfair because the offensive line wasn't as good as it should have been. And B, the quarterback play was atrocious during most parts of the season. So, that's a recipe for, a lack of production. If you don't have a receiver that's going to get you the ball, you're not going to catch the ball. You're not going to be productive. So, and, you factor in, having Colston Loveland and Michigan throwing the ball to tight ends like 48% of their pass plays, that factors in that, that's less balls for the wide receiver. And when the wide receivers were getting passes thrown to them, they either were woefully behind or over or whatever. It just wasn't getting to them. So, yeah, I mean, do I think the wide receivers can play better? Yeah, of course. But I'd like to see how this group looks with a quarterback that can get them the ball. It's particularly Donaven McCulley, who, by all accounts, is having a really strong spring. They've made some good additions. Andrew Marsh is a good addition. Jamar Browder can be a good addition if his size if he can carry that size and translate to the field. I think he can be a very good receiver. So, it's not a star-studded lineup of receivers they're going to trot out there, but it doesn't have to be if you've got a QB that can consistently get players the ball, and if Michigan's offensive scheme can get a little more creative getting these guys open as well. So, I think the route trees can be a little bit more advanced with a better quarterback too, which helps a ton. So yeah, I'm kind of giving the wide receivers a little bit of grace here from last year, just because the fact, like, man, they didn't have a quarterback that could throw them the ball consistently. And I think that would have made a world of difference if they actually had that. So, yeah, we're just going to have to wait and see. I mean, I could sit here and say, yeah, this group is going to be so much better, but we'll have to wait and see. I mean, I think, the quarterback is a bit of a low hanging fruit argument, but if they have a quarterback and the wide receivers aren't producing, then you kind of have to look a little deeper and ask what's going on. But I'm not at that point yet. I mean, I need to see a quarterback that can complete some passes here.
You're on mute, Brock.
Thank you. Here's where I'm at with the wide receivers. I agree with a lot of what Josh said on the whole thing. Obviously, with a better quarterback, the receivers are going to be better. Like that's clear. To me, I'm a little bit more skeptical though, simply because of the fact that it was so bad last year. I feel like I'm almost to the point where I need to see it to believe it. Like, if Michigan trots out Bryce Underwood, that'll be great. He's going to be a huge improvement at quarterback for Michigan. But you look at this this depth chart here. You got Donaven McCulley. He's a former quarterback. Fred Moore, he's proven himself a little bit. He's shown some flashes, hasn't really been too consistent. Semaj Morgan is interesting because, like Darren made a good comment. Semaj Morgan was really productive as a freshman with J.J. McCarthy as his quarterback.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then last year,
not a coincidence.
Right, exactly. And Trevor, like you said, last year, Michigan didn't have the quarterback play, and they used him poorly, right? So he's a bit of a wild card to me. Can he get back to what we saw him do as a freshman? I think about this isn't wide receiver play, but I think about his punt return against Iowa in the Big Ten championship in 2023. That was explosive. I'd like to see more of that from him. But in my opinion, I really need to see it to believe it, just because last year was so terrible. And can Donaven McCulley be that wide receiver one, that target where, hey, Michigan's got 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8. It needs a first down to keep the drive going. Is Donaven McCulley the go-to target in a situation like that, right? They're going to need someone to step up to be that guy. There are the one thing I will say, and we've talked about this a lot throughout the offseason so far, is that there are a lot of names on there that have a lot of talent, and Michigan's to the point now where they just need 1 or 2 of them to really step up and emerge and prove themselves. And with what do we got, a dozen guys on that list, maybe I think the odds are pretty good that 1 or 2 of them will be able to emerge and really make a difference.
Yeah, and I don't want to beat a dead horse too much. But I mean, on the show with my stock reports every week, I was just getting so frustrated because the usage of the wide receivers made absolutely no sense. So while I am skeptical, and I think I'm also in that I'll believe it when I see it mode, similar to you, Brock, for me, it's not the players. For me, it's the coaches. Stop over rotating these guys. Stop putting them into situations that make no sense. If O'Leary is the better receiver, fine. Why aren't you throwing it to him? If Kendrick Bell is getting the most snaps on the team, why isn't he getting any targets? And it's not no block, no rock, right? There wasn't like this night and day difference where you're like, man, Kendrick Bell is the best blocker on this team. He has to play. That's not what was happening. It made no sense. And then these route trees and some of the play calls where it's like, and I know this is a Kirk Campbell problem, but like mixing in this air raid where you're doing, 4 deep curls at the marker, that doesn't work if you have no threat of going deep. The defense isn't going to keep backpedaling. They're staying at the marker. It was just asinine. So for me, Lindsey coming in alone raises the prospects for this group for me. Darren says I was right, so I'm going to throw him up there anytime somebody says Trevor was right. Just use Semaj correctly. I know people want to call him like a gadget guy. That wasn't necessarily the case. In 23, he had the best yards after catch average on the team, better than Roman, better than Cornelius Johnson. He had the best yards per route run. He had that back shoulder touchdown catch that I thought was really good as well. He flashed the speed, like you said, on the return, Brock. So, like, dude, I think the guys are there. Make some good play calls. Let's have some diverse routes. Let's not have 2 guys end up at the same spot over and over again for some reason. A quarterback that can throw the ball, an offensive line that could protect, and then, hey, all of a sudden this group looks better. Is it where it needs to be? No. And there's a lot of really, really good recruits, 4 and high 5-star, the best wide receivers in the 26 and 27 class are interested because of Bryce Underwood. They're not committing till the fall, and you prove it to them on the field. You have sold your vision. Now you got to do it. It's got to happen. And I'm not saying they need to open it up and become an air raid offense. You just got to execute the passing offense better. Just a fact.
Yeah, I mean, Michigan won a national championship with a boring offense, and I use quotations with boring, but I mean, it's not flashy. It's not, you're not going to be like, oh wow, they're running all over the field. They kick your ass and they beat you down until you just can't. You can't stop them. And so it doesn't, you're right. It doesn't have to be this unique, totally overhauled offense where everything looks different. I mean, and it wouldn't anyway, just because of who the head coach is and his mentality of being physical and running the ball. A lot of that, smash. A lot of that is going to stay the same. And
Lindsey likes to run the ball too. That's not going away.
Right. You don't need to reinvent the wheel with the passing game. You just need to kind of reinvigorate it a little bit, add a little bit of freshness to it. You don't have to completely change your mindset. Just add tweaks here and there to make it better. And the biggest tweak you could make this offseason was add Bryce Underwood. The number 1 quarterback in the country. Add him. Wow. Well, that changes your whole trajectory, So, and that's assuming obviously he comes in and plays well right away. That has a lot to do with it as well. But, look, they don't have to reinvent the wheel. They don't have to go away from who they are. They just need to make some little tweaks here and there, and they'll be a better team for it. And
you guys stop saying tweak. I keep picturing the South Park character Tweak every time you say tweak.
So it's obviously a long way to go until the season starts. Anything can happen. We haven't even we're not even discussing the spring portal yet and what they could or won't do. And that's not even factoring in potential departures as well. So, Yeah, look, this team this version of this team that we're looking at right now might not be the same one that we're looking at come August. So it's early. Spring is grain of salt time, and this time, you're talking about a mound of it of the salt that you should look into.
I'll just tell.
I'm not. No, I've learned if anything has from last year has taught me I'm not going to get too high or too low when it comes to anything.
No, and that's what I was saying with the Bryce Underwood hype even too. I'm not saying that necessarily needs to translate into, oh, my guy's gonna have this unbelievable year.
Yeah.
He's gonna make mistakes. He's gonna throw picks. He should throw it. Like that's gonna happen, right? I'm gonna blow by tight ends here just because we're already half hour in, and I don't really. I mean, intel wise, I don't know that there's anything here worth sharing. Marlin Klein is still a freak athlete. Hogan Hansen, I think people assume Klein is kind of like next up, but Hansen arguably could be more of the next Colston Loveland just because he's going to fit into that slot role. And like I said, Chip Lindsey likes tight ends in the slot. Don't be shocked if Hogan Hansen's your number 2 receiver this year.
Yeah, but you look at Klein and I think Hansen is a more polished version of the tight end. I think he's more polished than Klein is because Klein is still relatively new to football. But
yeah,
you look at his athleticism, you look at his speed, he could be an excellent kind of slot tight end guy too. So again, not having Colston Loveland is bad, but the tight end group is still going to be pretty good. They continue to recruit the tight end position well. They continue to develop, just look at what Hogan Hansen did last year in a team that was really, really bad throwing the ball. There's a lot to like with this group for sure.
Brock, real quick, just give me a name from this group other than Hansen or Klein that you'd like to hear some chatter about or see, whether it's in the spring game or as we get into fall, start to come up a little bit more.
I'd like to see what Brady Prieskorn can do.
That is the correct answer.
Yep, that is the only answer. The only answer.
That's the test. Listen, he got hurt during pregame warmups against Ohio State. One of the craziest things I've ever seen. But he's a local kid that has a lot of talent. And I don't know, Josh, if you've been hearing anything in terms of intel on him, how he's doing health-wise there after his injury. I guess that was 4.5 months ago or so, roughly. So, getting back from it. But I'm interested to see what he can do because he's got a lot of talent, got a good frame, and I think he could work his way up that depth chart.
Yeah, from what I was told at the time, he didn't have anything structurally wrong with him. It was just it wasn't a great injury, but nothing structurally wrong, which usually bodes pretty well for participating in spring.
All right. Yeah, he's the guy, right? Like, especially when you're thinking about moving forward, whether it's as a tight end 3 that gets on the field a ton or not, Prieskorn, I'd like to see him jump a Marshall, Deacon Tonielli, guys like that. Sorry, I'm trying to think of how I wanted to display this. It's not letting me zoom out, so we'll just kind of scroll through. Look, you guys know the names. We've been talking about it as far as coming into camp, what we expected. Evan Link staying at left tackle after his good game at left tackle against Bama. Obviously, right tackle leaves Andrew Sprague. We've been all over this kid since he committed his stud potential. I think the only interesting note early in camp has been Giovanni El Hadi going back to left guard, his more natural position. Nathan Efobi has been getting a lot of hype at right guard. He's a guy I think, like, well, I'll be frank, Nate Efobi had opportunities to start elsewhere, right? And he stayed at Michigan. So him at the right guard spot. What gets interesting for me is this name right here, Lawrence Hatter. Lawrence Hatter's not joining the team until the summer, but national champion over at Ferris State. He is a left guard. He's expecting to be the guy at left guard. Will he push El Hadi at that spot? And then it does, Efobi kind of lock up a right guard spot at that other tackle spot. Brady Norton is the guy who we were initially told was kind of a swing dude, probably wasn't going to play this first year. He's gotten some pretty good reviews early in camp. Does he push Link at left tackle? And does that mean Link goes to right guard? There's a lot of guys that will tell you they'd like to see Link at guard, right? Go back to the right side, but move to guard next to Sprague. Like, there's still a lot of Andrew Babalola. I know a lot of people are excited about him and they're saying good things about him. He's another guy that hasn't played a ton of football. And I think asking him to start this year would be a really big ask.
I agree.
I've got Roebuck here at right guard. I know he's actually been getting some looks at right tackle. I wonder if Frazier, I've been calling Frazier the next Zach Zinter for a long time. Maybe he moves to guard. My point in all of this is I think Michigan is going to approach this year as I'm going to find my best 5, and then we'll figure it out afterwards. It seems very penciled in right now in terms of Link, El Hadi, Krypton, and now Efobi, maybe Hatters in that conversation, Sprague. But we're a long way from knowing what's going on with this group, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm not ready to say anything as an absolute outside of maybe Greg Crippen being the starting center come fall. I mean, that seems like the only like lock at this point. Efobi has done a really good job. He's earned some time, and he could be a potential jumbo guy, a 6th offensive lineman, if you will. I mean, he was definitely competing for that 6th offensive lineman spot last year in fall camp, and ultimately didn't really get that role, but kind of started to see some time towards the end of the year. So I think the big thing for this year is that now they have depth, experience depth, which is really important because it's something they really didn't have last year. I mean, they had experience, but now, you've got a battle-tested Evan Link. You've got Giovanni El Hadi, who's had a whole year of starting experience instead of being like a plug and play guy here and there. But Brady Norton is really interesting to me.
Yeah,
Hatter is really interesting to me too. I think Norton is probably the most intriguing out of that two I mentioned. A young guy still with plenty of years left in terms of eligibility. I think he could play a role at some point. I don't know if it's going to be this year. I mean, the backup left tackle spots, Brady Norton or Andrew Babalola, both guys haven't played football at a high level. So you're kind of at a risk a little bit if something were to happen to Evan Link, that, Norton or Babalola will come in and they're going to be relatively raw. And obviously I know you can shuffle other guys in other spots.
Yeah.
Like even like a Blake Frazier coming in now that he's healthy.
Or Sprague moves to the left and you do something else at right or whatever. But
yeah,
Norton might be the first guy off the bench no matter what, just because of his versatility.
Yeah.
If he's not starting, if he doesn't want a starting job, but
yeah, I mean, I tell you what though, both Norton and Babalola look the part physically. I mean, they need to catch up a little bit in terms of development, but Babalola's got plenty of time. He's going to be very, very good. I mean, there's the future is really bright. You got Babalola, you got
Ty Haywood's joining in the summer.
Yeah, Haywood,
right?
You got Haywood, you got Avery Gatch.
It's a good
not
group.
even mentioning Sprague, who is going to play and still has plenty of time left as well. There's just a lot to. I mean, I would like to see the younger guys kind of get more time, but the Hatters, the El Hadis, they've earned the Crippens, they've earned time, they've earned their spots. But again, like the what I was just talking about earlier, it's like this is definitely not the final product. There's going to be some movement. There might even be some departures, or they might add another name. We don't really know yet, but. Yeah, I mean the starting five right now, I think would be pretty good if that was the final iteration of it, trotting it out. But I would like to see some younger guys take a step and beat out some of these older guys. I mean, I think that would be either one thing, two things, very, very bad or very, very good. So there's no in between. There's no in between there. So I guess we kind of have to see how it looks on the field, but yeah, I mean, there's plenty of talent there. These guys just got to have time on task. That's really the big thing I mean, the younger guys, I mean, most of these names here have had the time on task, but yeah, definitely written in pencil for sure.
I'm also really intrigued by Brady Norton coming over from Cal Poly. If I remember right, he was listed at 6'3", 275, and like you guys mentioned, he was a guy that a lot of people expected to come in and hit the weight room for a year, develop, and maybe be ready for 2026. And then all of a sudden, he's getting hyped up by the coaches. Yep. And I may have read a report, I can't quite remember, that he was already at 290, and he's developing really well and pushing, and all of a sudden he's throwing his name into the hat for a starting role there alongside Evan Link at left tackle. Now, Josh, like you mentioned, we saw last year that early on Evan Link won the battle at right tackle in fall camp, and then had some tough games there against Texas and things like that. And I think a lot of fans have some PTSD when it comes to how he performed early on, but he stepped up late in the year. He got a whole lot better as the year went on. And it's unfortunate that I think that Texas game and his performance early on in the year kind of a lot of people focus on that rather than how much better he got as the year went on. And I think if he keeps improving, he'll be right in line to start at either of the tackle spots, or like you guys mentioned, he may move over to right guard. You never know. I think this is interesting in the sense that it really could go any way. Like these guys, like Josh mentioned, Crippen is essentially with Sharpie at center. He's going to start, barring something crazy. Mm-hmm. But the other four positions, these guys can move around quite a bit. There's a lot of versatility that I see there amongst the starters that you have listed, Trevor. And so I think that bodes really well for Michigan, just being able to find the five best guys like we've talked about the last few years and throwing them out there and letting them gel together. But what I don't want to see, though, is a 2023 version of the offensive line where Michigan's moving guys all over the place the first 4 weeks of the season, and no one's playing the same position week to week. And obviously it worked out well for Michigan. They won the national championship, but that just, it's not conducive for an offensive line unit, in my opinion. So yeah.
Yeah, Evan Link is kind of like the Jaden Davis situation where I have concerns as well, but I feel like some of the criticism of him is so over the top. I've become this like huge Link defender, right? Like I did a whole piece about him where it was like, guys, he had a better year than Ladarius Henderson did the year before.
Yeah.
Right. Like you brought up the Texas game, the 10 pressures, that skewed so much. When he took over, when Gentry got hurt and got the job back, he was great. Played left tackle against Alabama. First start at left tackle in that bowl game. Didn't allow a pressure. You know what I mean? Ohio State, one pressure, I think it was. Like he played well at the back half of the year. I get the concerns, but redshirt freshman gets kind of thrown to the wolves. Now he's got a full off season. I think he could be good. The biggest thing for me with this group is kind of similar to wide receivers. I think Sherrone Moore now knows he needs to spend more time with this group, and he's trusting in Chip Lindsey to run the offense to allow him to spend more time with offensive line again. I think bringing back Castillo was a masterstroke. Another big reason I have so much faith in Sherrone Moore is when he sees a problem, he just immediately attacks it, right? Castillo back. Let me get more time over there with the O-line. Oh, also Biff Poggi, offensive line guy, right? Like bringing in all these assets back into the program to help this group out, I think is massive. And that's not a big shot at Grant Newsome, but like first year on the O-line on an offense where your head coach is OC being promoted, your OC is a QB coach being promoted, your O-line coach is a guy being promoted. It was just too much, right?
Yeah, it was just hectic. There's just too much going. There was just too much going on timing wise. It maybe would have been better if things would have happened maybe a month earlier, but yeah, there was just too much going on. And again, like I'm not going to base what Newsome is as a coach off of 1 year. I think he's an asset as a recruiter. I think he's a very good recruiter. Now, if he can turn that positive like recruiting into development, then he could absolutely turn into an elite recruiter and a very good coach. So I think I obviously we're in a society of sports where everyone's quick to want to call for someone's head if someone's struggling. But Grant Newsome isn't one of those guys where I'm like, yeah, Michigan needs to have a replacement like tomorrow. It's just not, they're not at that level yet. They need, this year is going to be a really, really big year, because if there's no strides being made with the addition of Juan Castillo and Sherrone Moore with more attention, then yeah, you're going to have to start looking at stuff. And the same thing could be said about wide receivers too. You know, Ron Bellamy now has Sue Campbell. And so if with more assets and more people and more of a brain trust, if there's no strides being made, then after this season, then yeah, you're going to have to kind of look at this stuff with a microscope a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, right now I'm just not even close to doing that. It's just not, it's not worth the time.
And the last piece, I've touched on this in the past, but I think the staff went through some learning curve last year and some tough lessons. Greg Crippen and El Hadi being back is proof that the coaches came to the players, and I think both sides admitted where mistakes were made, right? And this staff put way too much weight into the fall camp and the competition. Like, yes, competition, who wins, whatever. But in hindsight, Greg Crippen lost his job because he got hurt for a week, basically, and that opened up this door for Dom Jadis. And it's like, man, Crippen, if he had some attitude issues coming out of that, do you blame the guy? Right. After waiting 2 years behind Olu, behind Nugent, and he loses the job like that, and then you do this weird split thing. And then same kind of thing with Andrew Gentry too, right? Unfortunately, he gets hurt after he finally gets his chance to start, but like, he probably should have started over Link in the first place, right? So I think there's been some bridge mending and some acknowledgement of mistakes there. They're just going to come into this with a much better mindset, frankly. So
I agree.
All right, defensive side. This is an interesting group for me because you're losing Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant. There's no replacing them, right? Not with two players, that's for sure. That said, you get Rayshon Benny back for a fifth year. I think that's a monster piece. I think he was a lot better than people realized last year just because, oh yeah, Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant were getting a lot of attention. Mm-hmm. I don't know if he can make himself a first-round pick, but he's definitely a second-round pick, right? That type of talent. I think he can be really, really good. You go out and get two guys in the portal who are experienced, former five-star guys who stayed in their program for the full 4 years, have shown like a willingness to be in kind of a system where they're rotated. They don't need to be the dude. With Damon Payne and Trey Williams, I think they're really good fits. And you still have Trey Pierce ready to come on and take on a bigger role. And then I always mess up his last name, Josh.
Awana.
Okay. Ike Awana. And the interesting piece for me here is like, this is kind of a clear top five right now. And where it gets interesting for me is that the depth behind it. Number one, Eno Etta being DT6 going into year 3. That's a guy that got a lot of hype last year that didn't translate to the field.
Yeah. Versus
Cam Brandt, who we'll get to in a moment. Those two are kind of linked together, and Brandt takes on a pretty serious role at edge. Etta's a little bit bigger now, maybe more positioned to playing inside. We'll see. But look, he's got a lot of dudes behind him ready to step up. Manuel Beagle is ready. David Pale is ready. We saw now I can't think of his name. Owen Wafel transfer out because of some things that were already happening at the depth. Not to mention young guys, Benny Patterson and Travis Moten are going to be two guys in a couple of years we look back on and go, man, were they underrated. Incredible finds by Michigan, right? So yes, Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant gone. I'm not going to, like you said with Colston Level, that's not a good thing, right? But there's 9 guys here. Like this is a group where, you know, when you talk about, again, I'm not going to start predicting names or anything, but like at the end of spring and they're told, hey, here's how the depth chart's shaking out. The spot where a guy or two could leave is right here because this is a loaded group, even though you're trying to replace literally, you know, top 15 NFL talent.
Yeah, and we haven't even touched the defensive end portion of this group too.
Right.
And this is just the interior. This is just the interior of the defensive line. So, yeah, there's some really impressive stuff. I've heard nothing but good things about Damon Payne, Benny, and Williams this spring, and Payne, or excuse me, Benny has taken on more of a kind of a leadership role to it naturally as expected to be, but yeah, I mean, I love Travis Moten.
Yeah.
That kid, just his stats alone, insane. But if you can kind of mold him and develop him, I mean, you could be another Ajabo and be, just dominate people on the field. So, yeah, this is just the interior of the defensive line that we're talking about too, which is just crazy. Should be very, very good. Yeah, and you couple that with the outside of that line and who they get back. I mean, it should be a very, very good front again. It should be for the future, because I think if they address the interior a little bit more recruiting wise in the future, I think there's no reason why they can't just churn out guys yearly from like now until the future.
It's like one of those spots you just earn the trust kind of thing, right?
Right.
Brock, I think Benny's the obvious like number one in people's mind, but I think you were the first person to point this out to me. You got 3 fifth-year guys starting, and then on the interior of the offensive line, we didn't really touch on it, but El Hadi, Crippen, and then if it is a guy like Hatter, but even without him, those 2 fifth-year guys, that's a lot of veterans going at it every day in practice. But if Benny's the clear number one, which I'm assuming we'd all agree like he is, right? Who do you think's the number 2? I think we're going to see a lot of 3-man DT fronts, but is it Payne? Is it a guy like Ike? Is it Trey Williams? Who's that next guy for you?
Yeah. Well, you touched on my first point that I was going to bring up, is that, yeah, you look at the guys you've got there, Damon Payne, Rayshon Benny, Trey Williams, those are all 5th-year seniors. And then you go, we're going to get to the edge rushers, but those guys are older too, right? So this is going to be a very, very experienced defensive line for Michigan. Obviously, that's going to help them tremendously in the pass rush. We've seen what a dominant pass rush can do in games, right? Ohio State, Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant absolutely wrecked the game. They completely ruined Ohio State's game plan, which was to run the ball right into Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant. I still don't understand that, but
what a game plan.
I still never not laugh when I think about that. Oh man.
But yeah, for me, that guy behind Rayshon Benny, it'd be really easy to go for a Damon Payne or even a Trey Williams. But I'm intrigued by Trey Pierce. I think he's got a lot of potential. He's shown it, and honestly, a lot of these guys do, but they were just playing behind Graham and Grant, who are going to be 2 first-round picks. So I'm really excited about Trey Pierce. I think he's got a lot of talent, and yeah, even those depth guys that you guys touched on earlier. I mean, it's crazy how much talent and experience this room has. And I think if they're able to develop some of those younger guys early and rotate these guys in, snap after snap after snap, then that's a strategy that Michigan used in 2023.
Great point.
That team was known for having great depth, and if Michigan can replicate that this year, that'd be a huge help.
You nailed it, Brock. Graham and Grant go from playing 30 snaps a game to 60.
Yep.
Right. And to get that rotation, and we saw a lot of rotation at other spots, but definitely not up front. I think this is, when you think about 22 and it was, oh my God, how do you replace Hutch? How do you replace Ajabo? Right. And there was no one clearly at the elite level as an individual, but as a group, it felt like they had more depth. That's where it feels like this team is going. I'm with you. And I'm fine with that. And then if I get an opportunity for some of these guys to break out in their limited role, then that's just going to translate to the next year and so on. But yeah, I'm excited about the veteran group, and man, I think Benny could be really good. I mean, like really, really good. Him deciding to throw that 55 on him was interesting. To say the least, but hey, I love it. I think Ike is underrated. Every time he gets on the field, he makes plays. It might only be 10 snaps a game, but he's a force when he's out there. And Payne and Williams remind me of Haynes. it's just two guys that feel like they've always been here. Neither one was looking for a bunch of attention in the recruitment process in the portal. Neither one was looking for a bunch of attention when they did commit. Neither one's looking for a bunch of attention. They're just coming into work, and I think they're such a good fit. Eda's going to be the story for me, because if he doesn't rise, he's going to fall. Right. And it's just an interesting storyline for a guy that was a big hype candidate in previous years. I've got the note here at edge that Barham should get snaps. I know they keep saying they used him at edge last year. They didn't, as much as it feels like it's being implied. They blitzed him quite a bit.
Yeah.
But like standing edge in the way that we thought he might be used more this year, I don't think they did. But and we could talk about this more when we get to the linebacker piece about how versatile he can be. But look, Barham's getting a bunch of hype again this year. The guy's a football player. Okay. I do think he'd be better at edge just because that takes advantage of some of his strengths. I also think that because NFL people have said that, right? But they're going to put him in the best place to succeed. But I get why you don't need to move him there, because you have Derek Moore back, right, on the strong side, who was better than people realized last year in terms of win rate and pass rush grade and all of that. He was right there, but Stewart was getting sacks. Mason Graham was getting sacks. Grant was getting sacks more easily as a double-digit sack kind of guy this year. No doubt in my mind. Cam Brandt was really good. His rotational role, he comes back. TJ Guy playing behind Josiah Stewart was really good last year. I think he had 5.5 sacks quietly in his role. He's going to finally get his chance to be the dude. Dom Nichols, I mean, the fact that he met with the media tells you all you need to know, in my opinion. Like when these young guys get talked about, or we kind of hear some intel, but when the coaches put them out there, I think that's a sign that they believe in them. I expect Nichols to get a lot of run as well. And then this is just another like who's who of, I mean, this list. I know there's some veteran guys like Keyshawn Bennett that still get reps, but timeline wise, Americ Kumba, Lugard Edikpe, these are some guys that maybe needed a year or two to develop that might be ready. Devin Baxter's another young guy that could get on the field. Nathaniel Marshall, we had as one or two top edge in the class. Julius Holly, another guy. These are young dudes that could get up there. So same thing. There's no Hutch or Ajabo in my mind. I think Derek Moore is going to be really, really good. But I like the depth here. I think they're going to be able to rotate 4, and they might even be able to get down to 6 without a ton of drop-off.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, I don't really have much more to add other than that. I mean, Derek Moore is going to be a stud. TJ Guy going to be a stud. It's kind of in a set it and forget it range with these edge players, because there's just so much experience there and just talent. You know, I mean, I would like to see younger guys kind of make a move, like a Doc Pay, and even a Devin Baxter has some skills. But when you've got guys like Derek Moore and TJ Guy in front of you, it's going to be tough to see the field. But even a guy like Dominic Nichols, if he's able to see the field regularly, I mean, that means he's earned it, though. That's the most important part when it comes to this particular position group. Is if you're getting snaps over Derek Moore and TJ Guy, you've earned it. You know, this isn't just, there isn't charity snaps. You've earned those snaps. So I mean, you can just set it and forget it with Derek Moore and TJ Guy. Those guys are going to be very good, and I think Moore can work his way up to be a pretty high level draft pick, as well as maybe even TJ Guy can kind of sneak into a mid round type of mid to late round type of guy as well.
Agreed.
Yeah, I don't have much more to add. You guys nailed it. I'm really excited about Nate Marshall and what he brings. Flipping from Michigan to Auburn and then back to Michigan. He'll be good. And Trevor, like you said, he was highly rated on Rivals as a recruit. The only other thing that I can really add here is that I was impressed when it came out that it was Sherrone Moore's idea for TJ Guy to switch jersey numbers from 42 to 4. And that tells you all you need to know about TJ Guy and him stepping up into more of a leadership role and him being one of those top 2 guys along with Derek Moore there at edge. And I think that goes to show that Sherrone Moore expects him to have a really big year there at edge.
it's old school. When you got a single digit in football, that meant something, dude. You know what I mean? A number 4 on the edge is trippy, but yeah, I think you're right though. It's symbolic and it means something. It's a way of showing faith, confidence, right? And he's another guy that might not have. I mean, you got to remember, we were to the last minute with Moore and Guy about whether they were even coming back.
Yep.
So getting both of them, and then again, it's just such a good mix of experience and talent, plus some young guys that have gotten a little bit of experience, plus some young guys that are super talented that could break out. I really like this group, and I think I put the comment up. I believe it was Steve. Yeah, Steve said it. I agree. Lou Esposito might be the best position coach this staff has. Like he's phenomenal. And then you still have LaTroy Lewis left, but Pernell McPhee is still here. Is that correct?
Yeah, he got the Pernell McPhee got the job promotion after.
Yeah. And that's an interesting piece too that we'll probably have to break into more because we talked a lot in the offseason about the only potential staff change I thought might happen was bringing in a safeties coach and maybe moving JB Brown. But with this new assistant rule and analyst rule, Lionel Stokes is the safeties coach. Like that's his title.
Mm-hmm.
He's the safeties coach. And they're just keeping JB in his coordinator role for special teams because that allows him to impact recruiting differently, right? So it's adapting to these new coach rules where it's like they're not mentioned as often as some of the other assistants, but a guy like McPhee is actually going to have a huge role on this team this year. So we'll have to dig into that more later. But there's not a ton here at linebacker right now, but I do want to mention, again, Barham's getting a lot of hype as, again, just the type of football player he is. I think we saw him get a little bit better as the year went on because I think he might have been the biggest I don't want to say victim. That sounds way too harsh. But as Wink was adjusting to the college game, there were some guys that were put into spots where they were just asked to do way too much or were out of position, and I think Barham might have gotten the worst of that early on. And once they really allowed him to focus on what he's good at, I think we got to see how good Barham could be. This is a guy, again, he played for 2 years at Maryland. We know the kind of football player he could be. Ernest Hausman is back. That's where things start and end. It's Hausman and Barham. Yep. That said, I'm very intrigued by what I think is going to become the battle between a Jimmy Rolder and a Cole Sullivan. Not only in terms of rotating for rest, but if Barham is getting more reps as a more versatile player, who's that guy that's going to allow them to do that?
Yep.
Rolder's had his moments. He's dealt with some injuries, this and that, but I think he's a guy that can come in and play Mike. But Cole Sullivan is getting hype again, and he's such an intriguing prospect. Those two right now for me, and that's not even getting into the transfer of Troy Bowles, the 5-star Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng, a guy like Jason Hewlett who could still potentially make an impact. Again, you guys can feel free to talk about any of those names, but that's just kind of where we are right now as far as chatter coming out of spring. Hausman is Hausman. We know what he is. Barham's a freak again. And then Cole Sullivan just kind of hanging there, ready to become a star.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to make it seem like we're kind of skipping over Hausman and Barham here, but I mean, they just
is what it is.
Yeah, they are who they are. And you did that. You did that one for me. I did not use that today. So there you go. Of course it had to be. Hausman and Barham are who they are. We know what they're going to do. Hausman, there probably is another slight level that he could reach this year, but it's the depth. It's the depth behind them that they're going to have to start developing and playing. I mean, you'd like to see Jaden Hood do something. He's had some hype, and that's not a shot. It's not a shot at Hood. It's just he just hasn't had a chance to really get out. I mean, last year, yeah, he did at times, but I'd like to see him kind of work his way into a bigger role. This
is a guy that was kind of on even territory with Junior Colson at one point.
Yeah,
right. They were in the same class, and it was like Colson was the guy that took the first step and got to start a bunch, and Hood has just never taken that next step.
Yeah. You'd like to see him do that at some point. The way that he's been talked about, you feel like it's coming, but at this point, you can make the argument that he could get passed up by someone. I think Cole Sullivan could probably leapfrog Hood. Maybe even Owusu Boateng could as well, depending on how he looks. And that's not even
which he's healthy. He missed a lot of time at the end of high school last year. He's healthy and practicing. So
right, and that's not in Troy Bowles too. I mean, he hasn't played much at Georgia, but a 5-star is a 5-star. You can't teach that kind of thing. So, I'm more kind of looking at the linebackers from a depth perspective, and like to see a guy like Cole Sullivan step up because he is the future. I mean, and his future might not even be at linebacker if he continues growing and stuff.
I was going to say, Steve did ask that, and I'll be honest, when he first committed, it was like a no doubt in my mind he was going to end up at edge. I thought his tape, the Chase Winovich comparisons have been there from the get-go because he's from Pittsburgh and blah, blah, blah. That said, he's 6'4", 6'5", and the way, from a diet standpoint and weightlifting, the way they've been building him up, he's not getting huge from an edge perspective. So could he? Sure. Does it feel like they want to keep him at linebacker? Absolutely.
Yeah, it kind of just looks like they're just developing him to be just a bigger linebacker, taller linebacker, because he's athletic enough to, add some mass and obviously he's a tall kid too. So, it just looks like he's just going to be a bigger linebacker, which is fine because if he continues to make some athletic plays like he did last year at certain points, he could turn into a pretty good one. It's just all looking ahead to the future right now, because Barham obviously is not going to stick around forever. Houseman is gone. So, you really want to see a Cole Sullivan, Bowles, and a Owusu Boateng kind of at least see time. Who knows if that's going to be
what a
big time, but Steve's not wrong. If Furbush was just a bigger linebacker, didn't really have a huge role. I'd like to see Sullivan have a bigger role than what Noah Furbush did with the program, but it's very similar body types in terms of that bigger presence at linebacker and not necessarily giving in and putting him at defensive end and plugging him in there.
Yeah, just building off that point on Sullivan's frame. It's interesting to me that Michigan's got two guys. Jayshon Barham is 6'3", 248 is what he was last year. And Cole Sullivan, like you guys mentioned, 6'4", 6'5". Those are two really big linebackers just in general. That's bigger, considerably bigger than your average linebacker. And, I think back to 7-ish years ago at this point when Devin Bush was around. I think he was 5'10", but and Devin Bush was great. He was a great sideline to sideline linebacker. He could beat you to the white paint over there on the sideline. He could beat most ball carriers there, and he was really good at that. And do Barham and Sullivan have that kind of versatility and agility? I'm not sure. Barham, like you said, Trevor, had some struggles early on in the year, getting situated with Wink's defense. He played better as the year went on. But yeah, that's something I'm interested to see.
It's a really good point. And I think it's part of, and we're going to talk about this when we get to the secondary, the modern college defense and the positionless defense, right? The first little bit of that we got was the Viper position, right? At Jabril Peppers and Khaleke Hudson. And now we're almost going away from that, where it's like, because you have these freak athlete kids who can come in and be 6'5", 240 and drop back into coverage and blitz and affect the run game, like you're seeing some bigger dudes get plugged into these roles, and you're, hoping that your edge guys can do more. It's interesting how it's changing. Yeah, it'll be something to watch moving forward. And the reason I say we'll talk about that with the secondary, and honestly, I was going to say, I don't think I even have this listed because I posted this before. But the nickel spot, talking to Mason Curtis, and I first noticed it in this has been more submarine than in years past. There's been almost no practice footage put out. I normally like going Zapruder film on that stuff. There's been almost none of it. But I was noticing that's Mason Curtis in the slot with the ones. That's interesting. And now we find out he's getting out. Look, about 8 guys have been mentioned at the nickel spot, but he's getting some run at nickel. And I remember talking about at the end of last year, guys, like Makari Page moving to nickel and Zeke Berry moving to corner was something I never would have predicted. And it worked really, really well. And I was like, I wonder if Wink is going to want that, a guy you would normally think of as like a free safety, that kind of size at nickel moving forward. And a lot of that has to do with, look, Chip Lindsey's not the only offensive coordinator putting the tight end in the slot a ton. Right? It's not the Semaj Morgan versus Mike Sainristills stills anymore. Right? So that position's changed a little bit. So as it stands, Zeke Berry sounds like he's staying outside for now, but he has that versatility to move back to nickel. Jair Hill, weird little roller coaster this dude's been on, right? In terms of the way the year ended, where he's not playing and the number changes for some reason, whatever, but he's in that CB2 spot. I think the conversation is, what happens at that nickel spot? Is it the more traditional, a guy like TJ Metcalf, who he might move to safety, depending on what happens with some health of guys there, but he's played a lot of nickel in his career, but does he not fit with the way this works anymore? Is it a guy like Mason Curtis? And those two are switching spots. And then for me, in terms of the hype and the conversation, CB3, Shamari Earls, right? This is a guy that came in, threw on the number 2 right away, wants to have that kind of Will Johnson type ascension. It sounds like he might be CB3. I'm not counting the nickel in this conversation, just from an outside standpoint. He might be CB3 already. And look, Zeke Berry's not a guy that we traditionally thought of as an outside corner. And like I said, Jair Hill's had his moments, right? We could see Shamari Earls being a starting quarter by the end of the season. Like that's the level of, I don't want to, again, just the overhype, like we've talked about, grain of salt stuff, but like when a guy comes in with high expectations and he meets them early in spring, you're just happy to hear like, hey, this dude's physically there. He's already competing. He's put in the work, etc. But anyway, a lot of weird moving pieces here. Your guys' thoughts?
Yeah, it's still very, it's still very early. I'm not gonna, I guess, buy or sell any type of, movement in terms of what the depth chart looks like at defensive back. I have heard that Shamari Earls is having a good spring. Has strung together a couple of good practices. Cornerbacks have played well, but they've also got beaten by the offense. I mean, it happens every year. It happens in fall camp too. So again, I'm not really gonna really judge too hard from that right now, but
is it fair to say, in terms of like, there's always so much positivity in spring camp, that maybe the one group where people have been a little bit like about has been the secondary?
Yeah. I think that's by default because they lose a lot of guys. I mean, you lose Will Johnson. Rod Moore is not participating in spring, so you don't have Rod Moore yet. So yeah, this is not a final piece. I mean, I'm really intrigued by TJ Metcalf. I think he could be a pretty good addition to this defensive back group. But yeah, I mean, guys just gonna have to take steps up this year. Like Zeke Berry and Jair Hill in particular. Hill probably more so than Berry is gonna have to take a step forward this year.
To me, this is very similar to the offensive line that we talked about earlier. A lot of moving pieces that could really play anywhere. I mean, Zeke Berry's been at safety, been at nickel, now being listed as the number 1 cornerback. You got TJ Metcalf. Where's he going to play? A lot of these guys, once we get to safeties, where's Rod Moore going to fit into the picture? Things like that. I mean, there's just a lot of names and a lot of guys that are moving around. And it's going to be fun to watch because, there's a lot of talent here. Zeke Berry played really well as a corner late in the season. Jair Hill, like you guys have mentioned, he's had his ups and downs. Like you mentioned, Trevor randomly having his jersey number changed at points last year, and sometimes he making great plays one play, and then the next play giving up a chunk play, something like that. So like to see a little bit more consistency from him if he's going to be that second starter.
That's the word, though. It's consistency.
Yeah, he's got to improve his consistency. That's his big focus this offseason if he's going to start there alongside Barry, who we have listed there as the other starter right now. But yeah, really excited about Shamari Earls. I remember seeing him down in Tampa at the ReliaQuest Bowl. He's a huge frame. I mean, really, really tall, and he's filled out his frame nicely already as an incoming freshman. So really excited about him too. So yeah, there's, like I said, a lot of moving pieces, and this staff's got a lot of work ahead of them trying to figure out how it's all going to fit together. It's going to be like a jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah, it could develop as the year goes on, and we've seen that in recent years where, even his first year, we brought Jair Hill with his up and down. Coming out the gate, it felt like he was going to be the dude of the young guys, and then it was DJ Waller. And then he does so well in spring camp last year. Waller leaves before they even get, into the thick of summer because he sees Hill's already ahead of him. So Jair Hill's a guy that was getting a lot of similar things said about him that we've said about Earls, where like he could have that Jesse Minter said, he could have this Will Johnson-like ascension. So you're right. He's just got to get consistent. Does Zeke Berry continue to be good at the outside corner spot, or does it make sense to move him back to nickel? It'll be really interesting. But I'm with you. I like the names there. I didn't even mention it's Josiah Edmond and Jeremiah Lowe are two guys that could get on the field for sure. And yeah, Jaden McBurrows is still one of the hardest hitting dudes on this team. If he can stay healthy, I think there's a role for him to get out there. But for me, it's Barry being able to lock down CB1. I'm really intrigued by like a Mason Curtis playing nickel or what they do there. And then of course, Shamari Earls is going to be the story there. You throw on the number 2 playing corner, it just kind of happens. Right. So we've kind of touched on this a little bit, just talking about the secondary in general, but Rod Moore is still out, hoping he can start to be more of a participant in the summer. You need him back there. His experience, his talent, his leadership. I think leadership from your best players was a massive void last year. It's not a shot at the captains they had, but players tend to look up to the dudes that are really, really good, right? So you want your best players to also be your captains or your leaders typically. So I've got Curtis listed here still again. He could plug into that nickel role. We don't know. Brandon Hillman, again, regular viewers know we've been Brandon Hillman fan club for a long time. He's a guy that puts some really the dude hit man, right? The dude, he loves hitting people, man. He is a physical safety. He's going to be a monster this year. Will Jaden Mangum get some playing time right now that he's had kind of a year to situate? Jacob Oden looks like he's gotten a lot bigger. I considered him undersized coming in. He looks a lot bigger. Jordan Young, again, I've got listed at safety right now. He could be in at nickel. And then we've still got joining in the fall. Yeah, you've got Elijah Dotson and Kenoa Winston. So I don't know. This group feels thin to me because I'm so worried about Rod Moore being healthy or not, or whether a Mangum can step up or not. But I'm really, really excited for Brandon Hillman to have a chance at a bigger role as well.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think Rod Moore's addition will play a major factor in this group. But yeah, I mean, you like what you see out of Curtis. Hillman is Hillman. He'll play a lot. But yeah, you want to see Mangum take a step forward for sure. But yeah, I mean, again, it's all written in pencil right now. It is thin in the spring, but I like Kenoa Winston. I think he's going to be a pretty good guy. So but you just got to let it play out and see what happens.
I think back to the Indiana game last year when Michigan lost 20-15, and Brandon Hillman was one of the biggest bright spots of that entire game. You guys remember he knocked out that Indiana wide receiver, knocked him out of the game. I mean, he hit him so hard he sent him to the locker room, and he had another.
It was clean.
Clean too, exactly right.
That's textbook not targeting.
Exactly. And he had another big hit in that game too. Everyone knows he's a big hitter, and he's seems like he's gotten pretty good at doing it cleanly. But yeah, like you guys have said, it's a lot of this is going to hinge on what Rod Moore's status is going into the fall. I mean, it's the spring and he's not playing. Yeah, that Indiana wide receiver is still knocked out. But yeah, it's the spring and Rod Moore is still not playing. I guess you could argue it's been a little bit more than a year since the injury happened, so maybe he's a little bit behind schedule. You could argue, but I mean, we're still looking at.
Josh, what do you want to say about that, Josh?
There's some other things that had to be addressed.
Yeah, I mean, basically, the intel that we shared on our board was, that something else had to be looked at for Rod that was not related to the ACL. So that's kind of what's delayed, his progress. But
okay, well, yeah, even still, we're still looking at what, 5-ish months until the season. That's plenty of time for a guy like him to get healthy, in my opinion. Yeah. So if he's fully healthy and he's out there starting, that's a huge help because he was a captain last year. This is a guy who started, if I remember correctly, against Ohio State in 2021
as a freshman. Yep.
And he's been through this entire run that Michigan's been on, the 3 good years, and then last year the down year being a captain. So having that returning senior captain in the defensive backfield, that's going to be huge for them.
Him and I don't think I'm going to put Benny in it. That's not fair, but him especially is like that final bridge piece of whatever. Again, I think the continuity thing gets thrown out the window, and I'm fine with that. We've seen where Sherrone Moore is different in terms of recruiting and whatever, and he deserves to have his own program. But I think Rod Moore brings something to this team that you can't manufacture. And him being on the sideline was great, and being at practice was great. They were calling him Coach Rod Moore. That dude on the field is going to be a difference maker, right? What he did in 21, the final interception in 23 against Ohio State, whatever. He's got to be out there. And even if it's getting rotated and not playing 50 snaps, that's fine. I look at this group, man. One, as a whole, the defense, the biggest thing I've been hearing, and I think you can see it almost tangibly when these guys are doing media appearances, they're confident, right? They really love the way they finished the year, rightfully so. Wig's confident that these players are like, they think they're the best defense in the country, right? Like that's how they're carrying themselves. And when you start to look at, we talked about linebacker, Hausman's not little either, right? Some big dudes, and Mason Curtis maybe playing nickel, and Brandon Hillman hitting dudes, and like Shamari Earls and Zeke Berry on the outside. Like, this is a big defense.
Yep.
It's athletic, but like, this is a big physical defense. And it's kind of, we saw some priority on speed for a while there that meant some of the smaller guys, and now it's kind of coming back the other direction. So I like where the group is. I like the confidence. I'm not even going to touch on Zavada is back. That dude is unbelievable. Best kicker in college football. Somehow not a Groza finalist. I don't get it. Hudson Hollenbeck is punting right now in terms of, would they look in the portal? Yes. I think potentially if the right punter came along.
Yep.
Semaj and Marshall are your top returners likely, but who knows? There's always some. Marion Stewart will get thrown out there. Joe Taylor again, right? Something random like that. But yeah, overall, what I guess, and again, most of what comes out in spring is going to be good news. It's going to be hype. It's going to be positivity. But what's sticking out to you guys right now, halfway through spring game on the horizon, in terms of the momentum from last year, and maybe what kind of, you're starting to think about what your expectations for this year are going to be. I'm not saying you got to give me win-loss record per se, but like, how are you feeling like this team with a lot of continuity on the coaching staff, right? You make the one change at OC, which felt like kind of a no-brainer move, but other than that, there's a lot of consistency this year after, let's be honest, Harbaugh leaving obviously was a huge change, but even before that, we got 3 or 4 coaches every year.
Yeah. This
has been like the steadiest offseason in Ann Arbor in a long time.
Yeah, no, it has been for sure. I guess for me, expectations, you're going to live and die by the quarterback. I mean, it's the quarter. It's going to be the quarterback no matter what happens. And I am kind of surprised. I wouldn't say surprised. I wasn't expecting kind of Bryce to be thrust into this starter like V guy role right away,
Right.
especially with Keene. But I mean, with Keene not being available, he's your next best option. He might have been the only option anyway, regardless of whether Keene was healthy or
Right.
not. But
like we said at the start of the show, it's like just the way he's being talked about. Like they're not even trying to fake it.
right.
Right. Like they did with JJ, where it was like, well, blah, blah, blah. Everybody knew JJ, right? But like they're not even trying with Bryce. They can't hide it. They love this kid.
Yeah, no, they're definitely putting him on this pedestal and really kind of setting the expectations for him high. And they should. I mean, they should be. I mean, he's a 5-star kid, elite high school recruit. You know, you have to kind of set the expectations high, and Bryce obviously sets his own expectations high too. So, you know, again, you're gonna live and die with a quarterback. It's just what it is.
That's exactly right. And Darren nailed it. The team's success will hinge on Bryce Underwood in year one and the offensive line. How well is the offensive line able to protect him? And how well are they able to establish a good run game? Because if there is no run game, then Underwood and the wide receivers won't be as effective, right? It's basic football. So that's what it's going to hinge on. And just thinking back to last year, I can't give an official record prediction right now, but think back to last year. I mean, Michigan finishes 8-4 in the regular season, but 7-5. Sorry, they were 7-5, won the bowl game. 3 of those losses, in my opinion, should have been wins had the quarterback play been better. I'm looking at Washington 27-17, Indiana 20-15, and Illinois 21-7. Those are 3 games right there. If quarterback play is even serviceable or above average, Michigan's 10-2, and they're looking at a spot in the college football playoff, right? So I think there's a lot to be excited about because everyone's expecting that there to be a pretty significant step forward at quarterback, and you're not going to be losing a game to Illinois 21-7, right? That if that happens in 2025, then something has gone terribly wrong. So, that's where I'm at. It's all going to hinge on the offensive line and the quarterback play because the defense is at this point essentially a known variable. You know what you're going to get out of the defense, and we just talked about. You know, Rod Moore coming back or still being injured, that's going to play a huge role in what happens. But for the most part, the defense is the defense. The offense is going to be what determines a lot of how this team succeeds this year.
Mm-hmm. And when you think about how good the defense was without a partner, right? Without an offense that was running clock to get them rest, that wasn't, don't even talk about putting points on the board, but like at least sustaining possessions to help you win the field position battle, right? It's amazing enough that they held Ohio State to 10 points, but they did it with an offense that could not move the ball, that was constantly putting them in tough spots. So when you think about the floor, what you just said, Brock, I think is spot on. Like realistically, something happened in that bye week before Northwestern. We know one was Moore basically taking back over the offense to some extent, right? Yeah. But like something finally clicked with this team where they're like, this isn't acceptable. And they came out and whooped Northwestern's butt and then beat Ohio State. They basically spent 3 weeks preparing to beat Ohio State, right? But like if that click had happened sooner, they should have beat Indiana. They should have beat Illinois. They should have beat Washington, right? The orgy Tuttle thing, that whole mess, right? So that's your floor right now is at quarterback. If I can get Davis Warren, right, and the offensive line comparable to last year, that's my floor. So is Bryce Underwood in year one better than that? Yeah. Look, his ceiling, I don't know how high it's got to go, but like, I think he's going to be better than that. He could still make mistakes, but I think his playmaking ability alone, his willingness to take shots. I think you said this, Brock, about like either receivers were open and not getting thrown to, or they were getting missed. Like, I think I said a lot of good things about Warren last year. It defended some of them because of some of their route and play calling, but like there were open guys too. right? It was just there. So I'm with you. I think I'm not ready for win-loss either, but God, it just feels like they were a lot closer in some way. They felt really far away last year, but they also felt a lot closer than maybe they were, right? Or weren't. But I also still think, because this is Michigan, how good Justice Haynes and Jordan Marshall are is going to be a big piece of it, because if they can run the ball and get back to smash and also do it in some spread sets, which is something Chip likes to do, and now the passing game opens up and we start to see everything just kind of click together, and the defense is able to rest a little bit more. They're not playing 80 snaps a game. Like, everything just starts to piece together and balance comes back. And it's going to be hard not to say this team has, I mean, even with a freshman quarterback, this team should have Big Ten aspirations, right?
Mhm.
Which is crazy, but it's also not. And it's also Michigan, and that's what the expectation is going to be every year, especially with this expanded playoff. Like, realistically, I think beating Ohio State and beating Alabama and the way things finished last year and getting Bryce Underwood really glossed over, which was kind of an uncomfortable transition year and has people really optimistic again. You can't do it again. Right? You got to be 10-2 competing to get into the playoff every single year, and better when you have a better roster. And then hopefully you get to that next level and you're Ohio State and you're undefeated or one loss every year, right? Like, that's the goal moving forward. But this year, I think it's, again, I'm with Darren. Screw it. I said I wasn't going to say win loss, but I think it's 10-2 in playoff berth. Whether they're going to get there, yes, Bryce Underwood. That's what's going to come down to, right? So, all right, not bad. Hour and a half, first time back. I do want to shout out our viewership on this episode has been a lot higher than I expected for our first time back. Like I said, I know we were gone for a while, and it kind of felt like we were going to come in and almost have to start over because we've lost some momentum. So, number one, good to see a lot of familiar names. You guys have been here since the start of the episode. We appreciate you. But moving forward, hey man, whatever you guys can do to help. If you like the show, tell your friends about it. Tweet it out when we're live. Help us build this back up to what we were doing before we were really humming. It's been good to be back, and appreciate again your guys' support while we dealt with some shit. But yeah, it's been good. So, as always, if you like what you see here, like, subscribe, notification bell, so you know when we go live. While we have been absent, Dennis Fithian has been doing an incredible job with his post-game basketball coverage, and him and Scar are already getting into their spring reports and breaking down what they're hearing with football and also covering some basketball stuff. So it's not just us. Dennis is a machine on this channel for us. So we want to make sure, you guys are checking out his stuff as well. And of course, Michigan.rivals.com. That's where we're at. Maize Blue Review. A lot of what we talked about today has been talked about inside the den. You can always be a part of the conversation over there. If you don't want to pay up front, you want to give us a shot, Blue30. Promo code Blue30 gets you your first month free. And come on in, ask our subscribers what they think. They're the foundation of our community, and we're proud of what we've built. And I think they'll say good things about us. So I'll go ahead and speak on behalf of you guys. Say thank you to everyone for joining us. It was good to be back. Good for the support. And we'll be back next week, Sunday at 7, to talk more Michigan football and hopefully some Michigan basketball portal clarity. But we'll be back. Hail to the podcast.